So last week someone asked me about the history of Battletech, specifically the history of the clans, and I wrote it out. It's been a while since I've done any Battletech stuff, but it just came out and I did a little research and it was about the length of 6 episodes of this. So this week is a brief history of Battletech, the clans, in a 6-episode mega week. Like most sci-fi, the mankind of the Battletech universe developed FTL travel in the 21st century. They spread out, and after a lot of bullshit, they ended up with 6 feudal states centered on Terra. That's what they call Earth in this setting. That space was called the Inner Sphere, and the only important feudal state in the Inner Sphere was the Terran hegemony. The hegemony had the most developed worlds, was literally at the center of known space, so they became head of the Star League, a confederation / bigger feudal state headed by a hereditary ruler of the Cameron family. The era of the Star League was known as the Golden Age, but it was also a time when Star League members curb-stomped less developed states at the periphery of the Inner Sphere, also known as the Periphery. This policy and the inherent stability of hereditary monarchies paid off big time when a Periphery native named Stefan Amaris befriended and betrayed the child ruler of the Star League, while the Star League defense forces were off in the Periphery curb-stomping some previously unstomped parts of it. Alexander Kerensky, greatest soldier in the history of mankind, led the largest military in the history of mankind into the largest war in the history of mankind to depose Amaris, break the Terran hegemony, and do that whole Captain America thing where he says, "I don't think I will," when someone asks if he's going to actually fix any of this. So he decided to leave, and because he was the greatest soldier in the history of mankind and had 18 charisma, all 80% of the Star League Defense Force's most loyal soldiers went with him. This was for some philosophical reasons, but basically he thought the Inner Sphere could implode just fine without him and his troops, so he left, and it did. So he went past the Periphery, then he went deeper, and deeper, and deep. Honestly, even centuries later when folks knew where they were going, it still took like 6 months to make this trip. Eventually, they found 5 planets to land on, in the full awkwardness of starting a colony with veterans scarred by war and with no hope of returning to what they called home because of one guy and a trunk full of battle mechs, and not, say, trained civilian colonists with a diverse spread of skills and tool sets to match. The Pentagon worlds fell into civil war, and because he's the genius here and I'm not, Alexander Kerensky decided to leave, and his 800 most loyal soldiers came with him because something imploded just fine without him. But he died, and his son Nicholas Kerensky took over. Nicholas took those 800 soldiers and created the clans. I had to tell you all that stuff about the Inner Sphere and Alexander Kerensky because 1, they go back to the Inner Sphere. 2, to the clans, Alexander Kerensky is like Jesus mixed with George Washington and a splash of Thor's biceps. In case these rough Soviet analogies aren't coming across, Alexander Kerensky is laid to rest in a glass coffin when he dies. So Nicholas Kerensky, being a furry or a scaly or whatever it is the blood spirits are, decides to split the 800 soldiers into 20 animal-themed clans plus whatever the blood spirits are, and while he was at it, he threw in an oligarchic socialist eugenics-based warrior culture. But snide jokes aside, when the clans returned to the Pentagon worlds in Operation Klondike, they kicked more ass than a boot factory with a donkey trapped inside, and proved that maybe something good could come of all this, as long as that good was premised on a metal robot wrecking some shit. There were a few problems, though, and I'll leave it to your imagination which parts of oligarchic, socialist, eugenics-based warrior culture might have the roughest transition from theory to practice, but someone had to be made an example of. The Jade Falcons were griping the most, which was pretty on brand, but then they murdered all of their own people who dared speak up. This meant that 1, the blood spirits were angry because self-defeating purity tests are kind of their thing, and 2, Clan Wolverine was the tallest poppy by default and got annihilated for questioning Ilkhan Kerensky. Clan Wolf performed so well in Operation Klondike that Ilkhan Kerensky was like, I'm joining these guys, making him both the creator of Clan Wolf and their first fanboy. The Jade Falcons are pissy about everything as a rule, but watching the wolves get picked over them after the whole murdered our own people so daddy would love us thing definitely went on the list. A while later, a duel between a member of Clan Wolf and Clan Widowmaker broke out into a melee. Ilkhan Kerensky jumped in to simmer things down, but was shot and killed by a member of Clan Widowmaker. Careful not to fall into the trap of their forebears and give in to violent revenge, Clan Wolf and Clan Widowmaker talked through their disagreement and the death of the creator of their society with a calm focus. Nah, I'm just kidding. Clan Wolf engaged in ritualized violent revenge and destroyed and absorbed Clan Widowmaker. So things went okay for a while, with the clans fighting and building up their societies and performing acts of espionage that read like frat pranks, with the Sarna.com entry on Sea Foxes being emblematic of the high-stakes power plays of the era. But eventually, Clan Smoke Jaguar wanted to crusade back to the Inner Sphere and conquer it, possibly because war crimes are against the way of the clans, but only if you do them against other clans, and the Smoke Jaguars wanted to waltz an entire Warhawk through that loophole. Clan Wolf thought that the clans should not go back to the Inner Sphere and that they should act like wardens, protecting it. This warden philosophy didn't include protecting the Inner Sphere from itself, clearly the Inner Sphere's greatest threat, so it begs the question whether or not Clan Wolf believed in aliens. Regardless, this is a story about a warlike culture inspired by invading barbarians, so the political blue balls that frustrate the inevitable big war of explosions and shit aren't important, because we know they're temporary. Those blue balls do create the Wolf's Dragoons, who, spoilers, were a detachment of Clan Wolf soldiers sent to the Inner Sphere to pose as mercenaries while working for each house in turn and send intelligence reports back to the clans via their massive space station. It's hard to overstate the influence of the Dragoons. In the Fourth Succession War, Federated Commonwealth generals were all, "Hey, Hans Davian, who's taking care of the Draconis Combine front?" And Hans was all, "The Dragoons have the left flank." And they carried one of the war's 4 fronts out of sheer martial prowess, advanced gear, and a well-earned hatred of the Combine. Here's another sentence about how much the Wolves Dragoons and the Draconis Combine hate each other. Operation Revival. So Clan Wolf couldn't win the votes to stop the invasion forever. So they resolved to be the best damned invaders they could be and used the clan's arrogance and bloodthirst for their own good. They narrowed the invasion forces down to just 4 clans to piss off everyone staying at home, and then kicked ass until they were one of those 4. As an aside, way more of the clan story focuses on politics than you might expect, and Clan Wolf is a fairly able political player. This is in part to the big middle ground in the Venn diagram of types of clan political elements determined by being good at fighting giant robots, and Clan Wolf politicians who are fucking good at giant robot fights. Anyway, the clans invade. First, Clan Wolf picked up 2 protagonists in the early phases of the invasion. Second, their invasion corridor was lined up with the weakest opponent. This was supposed to be a slight because of clan culture, but Wolfcon Ulrich Karinsky, who rolled a wisdom score of 18 and a charisma score of played by Ensign Mount, realized that worlds were worlds, and maybe he wouldn't fucking cry about taking them from fun-sized Inner Sphere state the Free Russell Hajj Republic. The balance of Clan Wolf's successes was explained by them being flexible about how they fought, and their goal to, win the war instead of teabagging dead Inner Sphere soldiers to prove the superiority of their way of life and spamming the voice chat. Meanwhile, Jade Falcons were doing their whole totally insane thing about eating up the Lyran half of the Federated Commonwealth, but fighting against Victor Ian Steiner Davian and Kai Allard Lau, the most protagonists of Battletech The Next Generation, and honestly good on them for getting as far as they did. The Smoke Jaguars alternated between fighting their own desire to just be dicks and the entirety of the Draconis Combine fortified by the protagonists of Battletech the original series, including the guy who can literally make his mech invisible from sheer force of sometimes this setting just does mystical bullshit, plus the Wolves Dragoons coming out of nowhere to defend the Combine capital despite years of literally murderous enmity. Despite this, the Jags did take some time to do the teabagging voice chat spamming bullshit. Ghost Bears were the 4th invading clan, and I'm pretty sure their motto is "The Bear Abides." Their thing seems to be that they're the cool ones who are just with the rest of the clans, so they can periodically look to camera and go, "Can you believe this motherfucker?" I mean, in a setting where everyone is kind of a dick, they eat the regulation number of babies, but they are pretty chill about it. They wrecked shit and took some worlds in a moderate kind of way. I mean, the Wolves did go toe-to-toe with one protagonist in the series in the form of Tyria Miraborg, but even then, she killed the most important Smoked Jaguar in the universe and made Ulrich Karinsky the new Ilkhan. I'm sure it was a wizard fucking move in the mind of the Jade Falcon version of James Carville or whoever thought of it, but putting the guy who was best at the invasion and also its chief opponent in charge of the invasion didn't turn out to be the massive win the Crusader faction expected. Ulrich Karinsky immediately called every other invading clan a cuck and saddled them with a second-rate home clan to help out. And I swear to the gods in my copy of Blood Legacy, he does the air quotes with his fingers. Those clans do cooperate, but also compete with each other and raise some internal tensions. Eventually, a guy from Comstar, which used to be the Starleague Department of Faster-than-Light Communications, which used to be Spectrum, which used to be Time Warner, says, "Hey, I finally learned enough about your culture to abuse it. I want to fight you in Tukiyad for all the marbles." And Ulrich goes, "About time, bitch," and then turns to the Crusader clans and goes, "Hey, this guy says he bets he can beat us up and also that you're fertile and make babies naturally. You guys want to take that bet?" And the rest of the Crusader clans, who we have established are idiots, saying, "Nuh-uh, we were born in Kansas and have no paternal links with our genetic descendants. He has a mom, and we can totally take him out. Also, what happens if we lose? Actually, we're gonna win, so we don't fucking care." And the Comstar guy goes, "Oh man, now I have to fight. If only I had a secret army full of veterans with advanced equipment that no one ever knew about, and also I'm secretly a military genius from Battletech, the original series." Oh wait, I totally do, and I totally am. So they fight the Battle of Tukiad, and the clans lose, and it turns out that the stakes were stop invading the inner sphere, you knobs. Don't worry, clans Wolf and Ghost Bear each pulled out individual victories. The Jade Falcons got a draw mostly because they had their own protagonist, Adian Pride, in this one. He died, though, because Jade Falcons aren't allowed to have nice things, but they can rent them. So now I gotta talk about Adian fucking Pride and the origin story for every Jade Falcon character that's not hilariously incompetent or hilariously insane. Jade Falcons are hella traditional, to the point that when Battletech wanted to write a novel about the archetypical clan experience, they chose the Jade Falcons for it, but then also wrote a story about an iconoclast who defied that experience because narrative tropes. So Adian was a kid, and he got cracked out of the vat, and apparently went to a really boring kindergarten before being transferred to baby's first boot camp, his Sibco, where he was treated like trash from the ages of 8 to about 18 by his falconer, aka Drill Sergeant Joanna. Now, during his youth, Joanna also slept with him and was pretty shitty to him even then, which I don't know if having your one central paternal figure fucking you and also degrading you is SOP in the clans, but if it is, then there's a certain clarity when you go from everyone in this culture is fucking stupid to everyone in this culture is deeply affected by a web of psychological damage from birth. Anyway, Adian does some risky protagonist shit for his high school graduation, fails high school, washes out, and becomes a member of the Technician Case. Still being a protagonist, in fact, let's assume everything Adian does is because he's a protagonist. He runs away, finds Perry, a fellow washout from his Sibco, and knocks her up before Joanna finds him and drags him back to his job. So Perry has his daughter, Diana, who is a freeborn, the clan term for not being trueborn, which means she isn't part of the eugenics program and is therefore somehow even lower on the social totem pole than Adian was. Adian doesn't know about his daughter, though, because he's captured, and his principal/commanding officer/whatever had a pretty serious guy crush on the stud who donated his genetic legacy to make Adian Sibco, and Adian reminds him of his old man, and so in a non-pederasty way, Joanna, he gives Adian a second shot to be a warrior by giving him a fake identity as a freeborn warrior, entering him in the freeborn warrior training program. Adian makes real friends with real people who aren't fucking insane for once, and becomes a warrior, and the moment he pulls some hero shit, fucks everything up by saying, "Oh yeah, I'm actually a trueborn, and therefore have a right to the Pride blood name, and I'm making a formal claim." The blood name will allow his genetic information to be passed on to the next generation because eugenics. There is a trial, but Adian gets away with it because in the clans, you can basically do whatever you want if you're really good at killing people with giant robots, which Adian, Joanna, and Adian's principal are. The principal dies in the process, and his last words are no homo, and Adian gets to compete for a blood name while Joanna resigns herself to a future orbiting this fucking himbo. So years pass, and Adian Pride is doing his thing, basically assigned to the crowd control portion of Operation Revival. Meanwhile, a unit called the Falcon Guards crosses Kai Allard Lao and comes down with a bad case of TPK. And since Adian Pride and the Falcon Guards are now both regarded by the Jade Falcons as this motherfucker, he's put in charge of them. So he and Joanna rebuild the guards, and one of their recruits is a freeborn warrior named Diana, who's Adian Pride's daughter. She knows, but he doesn't. So they go to Tukiad, and because the Falcon Guards might as well be an economics textbook that gives people hugs for all their worth among the clans, the clan breeding system allows them to be thrown into the fight basically the same way you throw pennies into the take-a-penny tray. But possibly via the superpower of being well-adjusted, or maybe because he's still our protagonist, Adian sees that the clan method of quick, decisive battles isn't going to work on Tukiad, and he packs the Falcon Guard mechs with lasers and extra ammunition. So while everyone else is running out of ammunition, stumbling into traps, and spamming the chat, the Falcon Guards are getting shit done. They can't carry the entirety of the clan's incompetence, and as each other clan in turn buckles, Comstar rolls the forces that were freed up from fighting them into the clans that are still fighting. So eventually the Falcons have to pull back. In the process, Mech Warrior Diana's mech gets disabled, Adian learns he has a daughter, and circumstances demand that someone has to hold back the Comstar forces while she's extricated, and also be a big damned hero, because you know why. Adian Pride orders the dropship to take off, and he downs a company of Comstar mechs to buy them the time to get that done. They don't tell you when your dad dies, you get a draw at Tukiad. Up to this point, I have been cheekily making fun of a story I have enjoyed for many years. This part is legitimately stupid, and I hate it, and I can't make fun of something that's already a farce. So Ilkhan Ulrich Kerensky was brought up on charges of genocide on the logic that he engineered the truce and that if the invasion paused for 15 years of the truce, then the next generation of the live fast, die young clan culture would have no edge against the inner sphere when the invasion resumed and they would all die. These charges were ratified in the clan version of the Senate despite being partial in text because that's how politics work. So Ulrich is like, I want a trial of refusal because that's how the way of the clans works. And he bid in his defense all of Clan Wolf. I don't know that he had the right to do that, but he did it. And despite the fact that it was really, really stupid to let him do it, everyone else just went along with it. This meant that in direct contravention of the way of the clans, Clan Wolf would enter total war with someone. The Jade Falcons were the only ones with the intention and ability to do that, what with the Smoke Jaguars being spent after Comstar put up more of a fight than innocent civilians, and the Ghost Bears not having a single snowy fuck to give. This led to the incredibly destructive, altogether cathartic, and probably a little sexy refusal war between the Jade Falcons and the Wolves. The warden leadership of Clan Wolf, former Ilkhan Ulrich Kerensky, Khan Natasha Kerensky, and Khan Phelan Kell, fed Crusader-aligned wolves into the Falcon forces, kicked a lot of ass themselves, and generally proceeded with their plan to weaken the Crusader cause instead of actually winning the war. In the end, Natasha Kerensky was killed by Joanna, of all people, in a fight that fans still won't shut the fuck up about. Ulrich Kerensky died in a dishonorable trap set by the Jade Falcon Khans, and Phelan, on orders from Ulrich, took the warden faction of Clan Wolf and... I gotta check my notes here, because it's been 25 years. I'm still dubious this actually fucking happened. Okay. Defects to the inner sphere with the material, lifelong clan warriors, genetic legacy, and apparently civilian support personnel to maintain the clan, and no one even saw it coming. I made jokes about frat boy pranks, but these people do have intelligence services, even if their purpose in text is generally just giving the audience foreshadowing for upcoming plot points and doing shit about it. It's okay though. Clan Wolf moves in with Phelan's uncle. Meanwhile, in clan space, a Clan Wolf guy named Vlad Ward wakes up because he was caught in that dishonorable trap that killed Ulrich Kerensky. He pals around with the dishonorable Jade Falcon Khans, learns they absorbed everything left of Clan Wolf, then does a trial of total backsies on the principle that he was under all that rubble and therefore couldn't be legally absorbed. Rubble being immune to clan law, I suppose. A couple of fights later, giant robot and otherwise, and Vlad Ward convinces the Jade Falcon Khans to make a spin-off called the Jade Wolves, which is all the old wolves plus he runs it. He then murders a Khan or two and rebrands the Jade Wolves as Clan Wolf 2, Khan killing Boogaloo, and it turns out that the Jade Falcons elected a Khan who can't even fist fight, which what? Anyway, we eliminate all the shitty Falcon Khans, and the new Khan and Vlad bang out the remaining tension between the two clans as fellow Crusaders, and we got two Clan Wolves. Clans Wolf and Jade Falcon rebuilt, with Clan Wolf pointing out to everyone in the home clans that their futures were built on shares of ownership across 40 worlds or so, while the Wolves' future is built on worlds in the inner sphere numbering about twice that, with an argument built on equal parts, we're the 1% kids, sell out, and an affected New York accent saying, we're the friggin' wolves over here. Members of other clans trialed for positions in Clan Wolf, rebuilding the wolves and weakening homeworld enemies. Meanwhile, Clan Wolf in exile tried to justify their existence and adhere to a code of honor as consistent as that of Catherine fucking Janeway. Events in the inner sphere are way more dramatic than those in the clans for a while, and eventually the inner sphere creates a cynical Star League 2 electric... Damn, I did that one. Star League 2, Secret of the Enduring Political Status Quo. They annihilate the Smoke Jaguars, who honestly had it fucking coming. Pile of eugenically perfected pricks. And then travel to the clan homeworld to do a whole trial of Knock It Off Forever, which the stupid motherfucking Crusaders vote yes to again, having learned fucking nothing since the last time. I'm not even pro-Crusader, I'm just anti-self-destructive behavior at this point. Vlad Ward, still Khan of the Wolves, says that because he abstained from the vote and got a draw in the trial, Clan Wolf is immune to the results of the refusal, which isn't how bets, voting, or the way of the clans work, but he's pretty adamant, so whatever. I mean, he just uses that to kidnap and bang Ivanka Trump anyway. Steel Viper Khan Brett Andrews was elected as Ilkhan next. It would later turn out that he was an ideological purist with a penchant for murder. How a eugenics-based society with a political system driven by combat produced a pathological idealist with the belief that violence could solve all of his problems is a question for sociologists. But clan scientists started dying in pretty large numbers around this time, so it will likely remain a mystery. Andrews' deal was that the belief that the reason they lost so much to the inner sphere was because they were in contact with the inner sphere. Andrews himself was tantalizing close to getting the point, but went for the everyone who has touched the inner sphere is corrupted by their taint and his black python is my scalpel. The highlight for Clan Wolf during the Wars of Reaving was moving to the Inner Sphere, the big city where there were opportunities and a future and Hamilton tickets, instead of the big farms, dying factories, and absolutely nothing of their small hometown. This was made easier when the family started making meth and insisted they didn't need a ventilation fan. But second to that was when they plopped down some badass in front of the genetic repository for the Kerensky genes and said they were taking all comers. 4 days later, all comers were dead. The genes had been deleted from the homeworld records, and the wolves blew up the repository, denying the homeworld clan's access to the founder's genetic legacy. It was a classic wolf operation. Sneaky and underhanded, premised on the idiocy of other clans, and backed by a mech warrior with a doctorate in construction earned exclusively with work credits for making piles of his enemies' broken battle mechs. In the end, they were abjured for it, which is like telling your kid they can't come back to the dying Midwest town when they have a bright future with a job and an apartment in the city. I accuse the clans of being stupid a lot, but really they're just hewing to a status quo and a set of presumed norms when the story dictates that status quo shifts or those norms are abandoned. That said, it was pretty stupid for the Steel Vipers to declare that every clan who had been in the Inner Sphere was tainted, because eventually someone remembered that the Steel Vipers themselves were one of these second-rate home clans called up by Yorick Kerensky to help invade the Inner Sphere. They were annihilated. The Wolves, along with the Jade Falcons, the Ghost Bears, the Snow Ravens, and the other cool clans, nope, not the Blood Spirits, moved to the Inner Sphere wholesale while the rest of the clans were eating their own faces off in a high-key reprise of Sparta's decline. Dark Age. I have almost no idea what happened after Clan Wolf stole Ivanka Trump. The Jihad happened, but the Wolves barely looked up from their autocratic borders while shit got blown up. I think some more of them broke off, but then both Wolf clans reunited because the Crusader Warden thing stopped making sense after there was no common clan identity left. Then they moved to the Free Worlds League 2, Wrath of Khan, I guess. The Jade Falcons did a lot of meth and elected Trevor Phillips as Khan, which went well. The Ghost Bears just stopped being a clan, ostensibly because some vague Nordic cultural elements were preferable. The Smoke Jaguars were actually only mostly annihilated and then became the Republic of the Sphere's Navy SEALs. Navy Jaguars? Oh, and the Republic of the Sphere became a thing. It's basically just Terran Hegemony 2, New Moon.